Hello, UMA students. This is Heather Mazurowski. I am a UMA instructor. I have been a UMA instructor for almost 4 years. I have been an English teacher for almost 27 years. So I am going to talk to you today about introductions. What I mean by that is introductions as in the introductory paragraph when you are writing an essay. And I am going to take myself off of the video in a few seconds just because I wanted you first to see me and maybe put a face and name together. But I will come back at the end of the video. Okay, so essay structure. I just wanted to add this in here just as a foundation, if you will. And the image on the right-hand side of the screen is from your textbook that talks about the basic structure of an essay is the opening, the middle, and the ending. All right. So a typical essay is going to have 5 paragraphs. It's going to have an introduction, which is the opening, 3 body paragraphs, which would be the middle, and a conclusion, which would be your ending. However, during this video, we will only be discussing the opening, or as I like to call it, the introduction. All right, now if you see on the screen, in the opening part, it says engage your reader, establish your direction, and get to the point is part of what the opening or the introduction would be. So we're going to talk about those, each of those ideas in the next slides. Okay, so engage your reader. What does that mean? What does it mean to engage your reader? If we think about that for a moment. Now, the book tells us, or your text or knowledge of an introduction paragraph says that it's usually the first sentence or sentences of the introduction and how we entice our readers to want to engage in what we have written. Or you may have seen this or heard this referred to as the hook. So the introduction should begin with the first sentence or the first couple sentences possibly of something that's going to grab our reader's attention or hook them, if you will, into wanting to read more. So that's what we mean by engage our reader. Now, how do we do that? How do we engage our readers? Typically, there are 4 ways. And if you see here on the screen, it says there are 4 ways to hook our readers, all right, or engage our readers. One way, for instance, is mention a startling yet little known fact about your topic. Now, this fact should be a little startling in a way. And you want it to be something that may be more of a common knowledge idea. In other words, it doesn't necessarily have to be a statistic that you found in research. Now, it can be, because some of the statistics we find in research are incredibly astounding, incredibly attention-getting. But we just want to remember, if it is something that we take directly from research that would be not considered common knowledge, then it would need to be cited. Okay, so sometimes that will be necessary for whatever topic we may have. So my example that I chose is many heart attacks occur on Monday mornings. Now, not necessarily that that's going to jump out to be so startling, but it does make you think, really? They do? And maybe then it might, so it kind of makes us pause and think, I didn't know that, or that's interesting. Why Monday? So it does create some interest in our reader, or some curiosity, or maybe some doubt for that matter, but it's going to entice them to read more. Now, pose a challenging question. And it's a question typically that you're not going to answer necessarily, or maybe doesn't even have an answer, or has many possible answers, but it's challenging. Now, this could be something like, how do you manage going to school, working, and being a single parent? Very easily. So when we pose a challenging question, we want to provide an answer. And again, it's not necessarily a question that we're going to answer throughout the rest of our writing or research an answer to. It's just challenging in that it gives us something to think about. So if we are the person, maybe a single parent who's going to school, working, and we read this and we think very easily, oh, how does that person do that? And again, enticing them to want to read more. Even if we are not the person who is a single parent going to school, working, but we have a lot going on in our lives. We're working, we have kids, our kids are involved in a bunch of things. There maybe we hold two jobs, and it just, we may not have these exact same things going on in our life, but still we are a busy person, and we read this and think very easily, that makes me want to read more. The next one says, offer a thought-provoking quotation. So this would be something that would be cited or stated, the author stated. Anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. Albert Einstein. All right, so again, maybe we beat ourselves up. Maybe we're that person who wants to be perfect at everything we do. Hates making a mistake. Again, this would catch our attention. Okay, maybe I want to read more. Or maybe we're not the perfectionist. Maybe we're the person who continually makes mistakes. Again, this would still pique our interest because we're like, yes, well stated, Albert Einstein. And again, may entice us to want to read more. So we've connected in some way. And then we have tell a brief, illuminating story. And this is my personal one. This actually happened to me. But it says, when I was 19 years old, my father died after 8 agonizing months of cancer treatments. So again, if you are somebody who lost a parent young, like I did, that may interest you. I know it would. If I read it, I would think, oh, yep, I understand. If not, if you lost a loved one at all to cancer, it may pique your interest. It may pique your interest just because you may feel a little bit sorry for the person. Maybe you think, oh, a poor person, and it piques your interest. So when we're talking about engaging or hooking our readers, in general, we are trying to find a way that our readers may connect. And if we connect, then we tend to want to read more. So that is engaging our readers. Now, establish your direction. This particular image that is on your screen is used on one of the assignments currently in an EN1150 course. However, this image is perfect to show what an introduction looks like. And if you notice, I said you want to present, to establish our direction, that is, in solely our introduction. We're not talking about any of the other paragraphs. I'm solely talking about the introduction. You want to present the background information about your topic. And you can do this by using one of the following. Show a problem, a need, or an opportunity. Connect the topic, showing its importance. Or tell what others say or think about the topic. Okay, so when we're talking about establishing your direction, so if you look at the diagram, the first part on the left-hand side of the diagram says attention getter or hook. That's what we just talked about on the last slide or the previous slide. We talked about the hook. We talked about engaging the reader. If you look to the right of the diagram, it says general. So we start very general. Now, the middle, or that green part, talks about your lead-in or your background information. All right, this is where we can talk about some background information where we are showing what the problem or need or an opportunity is, depending upon the topic we have. We can connect the topic, showing its importance. Okay, we can connect it possibly to things that may be happening in our world. Then, to show the importance of the topic. We could also tell what others say or think. In other words, we could possibly provide other information that's out there, whether it's research or, again, it's common knowledge. Research would need to be cited. So, in other words, we can certainly say, or present what others are saying about our topic. We don't have to use all of these ways. These are just 3 different ways that we can give some background information. All right, you don't need to do all of them. Pick one and use that to present the background information of your topic. And finally, then we have the thesis statement, which we will also talk about briefly in this video as well. Now, you also notice on the right of the diagram, it goes, as I mentioned, general to specific. So your introduction looks like an upside down triangle. You start very general and you narrow it down until you get to the thesis statement. Because the thesis statement will state what the rest of the writing will be about. Sometimes I find the introduction to be a very hard paragraph to write, me personally. So oftentimes, I have my thesis statement, I establish my thesis, and I write my 3 body paragraphs, and then I come back to write my introduction. Not always. Sometimes I do that because sometimes I struggle writing an introduction. Just my opinion. Does not have to be that way. Just my way of doing it. All right, now, again, I said I would talk about the thesis. So it says, get to the point. In other words, state your thesis. Get to the point, meaning get to the point. What are you going to be talking about in the rest of this writing, in the rest of these paragraphs? The last sentence of your introduction will be your thesis statement, which gets to the point of what your essay will discuss. And your thesis is 1 sentence that states your topic and the 3 main ideas. There is also another video that discusses thesis statements in more detail. If in fact this information is not enough for you, there is another video that discusses thesis statements in greater detail. Okay, what does a good introduction look like? Now, this is mine. I wrote this introduction, and if you remember from one of the beginning slides when it talked about writing a brief illuminating story, the one where it said, when I was 19 years old, my father died after 8 agonizing months of cancer treatments. So that's personal to me. So I chose that to share with you an introduction. Now, it's not a good introduction because I wrote it. I just mean it's a good introduction because it follows the guidelines that we talked about. Okay, so again, just a reminder, I'm not saying this is good because I wrote it. I'm saying it's good because it follows the requirements. All right, so again, remember the requirements. We have to engage the reader, have a hook, somehow get the reader to make a connection, or at least for the reader to say, or really? So, to cause our reader to either be curious, to connect, to want to read. When I was 19 years old, my father died after 8 agonizing months of cancer treatments. Once again, that is my engagement statement. It was bladder cancer, and it was said to be the result of him smoking most of his life. Now, well, let me read on until I get to my thesis, and we'll discuss about how the background information is presented. Many questions began to arise among my family, including my father, such as, is it operable? Is there treatment? What is the prognosis? However, after removing the tumor and receiving chemotherapy, he died 8 months later. So I have provided a little bit of background knowledge, meaning what kind of cancer it was. So in looking back, remember if we talked about the ways that background information is presented, it can be a connection, maybe to what's going on in the world, the problem, what's the opportunity, or the necessary reason to talk about this. I feel as writing this introduction, I did more of the problem and the opportunity, because I talked about that it was bladder cancer and that it was a result of smoking. So again, not necessarily that my rest of my paper is going to talk about how smoking can cause bladder cancer, but it's talking about what kind of a cancer and what caused it. So that's my background information, if you will, leading to my thesis statement. And finally, my thesis statement says, losing a father at 19 is heartbreaking, maturing, and debilitating. That's my thesis statement. So I will discuss how his loss was heartbreaking to me, how it matured me in many ways, but also debilitated me in many ways. So again, we go from broad, or a general statement, my father died of 8 agonizing months of cancer treatment, to giving a little bit of background information. What was the cause? What kind was it? What questions were there? To more specific of a thesis statement as to what I'm actually going to talk about. I hope that gives you a little bit more information, or I hope that maybe gives you a good example of the different elements of an introduction. Again, good introduction because it follows the requirements, not because I wrote it. Okay, here I am again. Final thoughts, last slide. If you have any questions, always reach out to your instructor. You can also reach out to academic services, as I have the number on the screen. And as a motivation, I guess this is kind of becoming my thing at the end of the videos, is having a little bit of a motivation or a motivational quote or saying. So if not now, when? In thinking of our education and thinking of our writing abilities, as I hear in many courses that English is not my favorite subject. I don't like to write. Hopefully, the different types of skills that you learn and gain and begin to apply and practice throughout your courses at UMA, as well as your career, and hopefully your everyday life. Hopefully, that's going to be your when or your now of when you begin practicing those skills and realizing that maybe English is your thing. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope that I clarified some things for you about introductions. And thanks for watching.